Salut tout le monde, Richard Metal Fantasy. Bring you guys an old school album review, and today we're going to be looking into this album's 25th anniversary, and it's from one of the best bands in death metal and one of the most underrated bands, in my opinion. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be talking about None So Vile by Cryptopsy. This was the band's second album released on July 3rd, 1996 through Century Media Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Cryptopsy, they're a technical death metal band from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. They formed in 1988. Um, they had some played some hype in Canada and also did a little touring in the U.S. And this is their second album. And then I believe it was like a couple years prior, in '94, they released their debut full-length album, Blasphemy Made Flesh, which I think is a really good debut. And then to how would they top it up? And in my honest opinion, they topped off with, in my opinion, a lot of people would consider this to be their best album, and I honestly agree. It's a fucking amazing album. I have only have as a reissue copy signed by their drummer Flo Mounier here because he's like the only original member that's on this album that's still in the band. And Cryptopsy, they've had like a couple lineup changes, and of course, I was lucky to see this album played live in its entirety. And for the occasion, I'm wearing my None So Vile shirt when they played it when they headlined the 2017 Devastation of the Nation tour. They played with, I believe, Kennedy Vale, Rivers of Nile. I can't remember who else was on the bill, but that was a good show. But anyway, like this album, ugh, it's still a fucking sick album. Like the musicianship on this album is superb. It's to a T. And let's just talk about just the production is pretty superb. Um, Vocally, let's talk about, in my honest opinion, one of the best vocalist that Cryptopsy has had is the almighty Lord Worm. When I've heard this album, when just it's insane how fucking sick this guy is. He could do like the lower kind of like death growls. Like I don't even know how low can he get. And then he does his like high shrieks. It just sounds fucking demonic sounding. I mean, nothing against like their current vocalist, Matt Makaki. Forgive me if I butchered his name, but I think Lord Worm just does a amazing job, and a lot of people do consider him to be the best vocalist that Cryptopsy has, and I can understand why. Um, that's and then the guitar work from John Levasseur. His like he has some really sick riffs. It also has a little bit of a melody to it. While it's just brutal and technical at times, but he also incorporates a lot of melody into Cryptopsy's sound. Um, the bass on this album is pretty tight. Eric Langois's bass is really audible, and you could definitely hear it. It cuts well in the mix. The mix between John's guitar playing, John and Eric's playing is great. Like it just Eric does some really sick stuff, and when it's heard well, it's heard well. Especially does some cool like bass slaps. Um, and drumming wise, Flo Mournier, in my one of the most underrated drummers of all time, and just in not even in death metal, but just in metal in general, he's fucking sick. So, without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Crown of Horns, which is just a perfect way to start off this album. It just shows the band's sheer hatred and speed, featuring like flows like sick blast beats along with some rapid fire guitar riffs and bass lines. And this song will just get you going as soon as you first hear it. And Lord Worm's vocals here are just really guttural and very low. And this song just goes in a very rapid fire play. At least I think it's just a very powerful opener. Great way to start off this album. And then we move on to the next song on the album, which is called Slit Your Guts. Now, the guitar riffs are really different compared to Crown of Horns, and it's also pretty much better, in my opinion. Lord Worm's vocals are really great, and it just fit the song perfectly, along with, like, John's, in my opinion, the best song on the album, and Flo's Insanity and on the drums, and a really short bass solo from Eric. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best songs on the album, and this could be like an essential to every death metal fans like collection. And it's a great song if you were to recommend checking out Cryptopsy. I think Slit Your Guts would be a song you should recommend. Next up is Grave of the Fathers. Fucking sick song. Just the musicianship on here is tight as ever. Dead and Dripping. This is was a weird, nasty sounding song title, but this song is actually heavier than the last few songs, which is hard to gather. And Lord Worm's vocals really sound great, and I don't know, it's just the rest of the band just goes through a routine with just some speedy drums and sort of like technical kind of like chugging riffs, and then John comes back with some great soloing in the middle of the song. Um, Moving on to Benedictine Convulsions, and this is pretty much where we get to hear Eric shine on here, and he does some interesting slap bass, which is kind of weird for death metal, but it really just suits well with the song, and he's a really great bassist. He definitely needs to be heard well more in this, and I mean, and I really wish he was still in the band, because now they have Oliver Pinyard, who's also plays in Cattle Decap, and he does great. But I feel like Eric's just has some fucking slapping, and it just, in my honest opinion, it makes it one of the highlights of this album. And there's like a little bit of a short interlude with some typical riffing, and then the song concludes as like a slower breakdown where the slap bass continues, and I think it's a great way to end the song. Um, Moving on to Phobophile. Now, this song has like a little piano intro, which kind of throws you off a little bit, but it also creates like a kind of a haunting feel to it. And then the bass comes in with a dark riff, and then the band just enters with full force, and it just, it renders you helpless, but just totally worth it. And it's, in my opinion, one of the strongest songs on the album. It's a lot more dark and it's more evil sounding than pretty much anything else from the album. Then we move on to another one of Cryptopsy's well-known songs, being Lich Mistress. Just another sick song. Like so far, this album is just fucking amazing. Like, how much more can you expect? But then we close things out with the last song, Orgiastic Disembowelment. Now, it's just some fairly standard stuff for the first few minutes, and then we're shown another sick bass solo with some sick slap lines just really just rock out. And this song features some rapid time changes, which just can't help but impress me. And then this goes out with a full frenzy, and then there's like a little like sample from a movie called Army of Darkness saying, "Go ahead and run home and cry to your mama." And this album is just a experience, and a damn good one at best. Now overall, None So Vile by Cryptopsy, a classic in death metal, and just or technical death metal, whatever you want to classify it as. This is an album that you need to listen to. So if I had to give this album a score, I'm going to give None So Vile by Cryptopsy a solid 10 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal. Merci beaucoup.